Thank you. Okay. So my name is Diane Szoller, and we have Ava Thompson and Carter Eady with us today to make this happen. And we're very pleased to be part of your conference week today. So organized by the Education Students Council, I know how challenging it is to organize a conference. So thank you so much for the invitation. So in choosing this session, you will have noted already that we are volunteers with Thames Region Ecological Association and its board of directors here in London. Carter attends the University of Waterloo and Ava is at Western, and that was described in the outline. My background involves about startup of about maybe 14 agencies on best practices and planning. I have both business and adult ed as my work background and post-secondary education training. So it seems when you get older, you just keep going to school. All three of us have contributed to putting this talk together. In addition, I'll be presenting. Ava will be helping with the visuals and the little exercises we have for you, and Carter will be our timekeeper. So you will have access to the slides and everything as I understand it after the presentation. So the next slide. I want to share with you today the topic of fostering environmental leadership. And to do that, it means I want to talk about experiential learning, community leadership, and global leadership. Also, TREA members have been facilitating a series of how to take action on climate change workshops, and today's topic seems to fit well to add into our series is offering some tips on how to encourage sustainable action. So we thank TREA Foundation as well for supporting today's message. So to begin, I'll just give you a brief introduction to TREA. It's a nonprofit, it's a charity. It was started in 1986, and it supports programming to educate its members and the public to protect the environment, stay informed, and take personal action on important environmental issues. These are prioritized at this time as including waste reduction, active transportation, and climate change. In its startup, TREA initiated various programs. One was the London Blue Blocks Recycling Bin Program, which is pretty ambitious for a volunteer group to put together and give to the city. We had a bike week, and there were various energy conservation campaigns and so forth going on, and TREA has continued from there. So we would like today to actually hear from you too. So it's not just us talking. And Ava and I will be sharing some exercises with you so we can hear more and learn from you. So be prepared. There will be little question sections as we go along. But first of all, we have a poll question. So Ava will take that on. So you can see here, we're just interested to hear from you in learning what field you're heading to as you complete your graduation. So if you can click one of these and submit it, then it will do some calculating and come up with an answer. Thank you. So Ava, perhaps you could let people know that we'd also like them to put their name in the chat and tell us where you're from. Your first name is fine. And Ava will give us a summary of the poll. We'll give you a few seconds to work on that. Thank you. We don't have too many people from London in here. Okay. Amazing. Stratford, Blue Point, Norfolk, Mississauga, Kitchener, Bolton, Cambridge, Kenora, Bridgetown, Thank you, everyone. Vancouver.
Diane, can you see those poll results?
Yes, I can. Can you, Ava?
Yes, I can also.
Okay, well, we'll give it a couple seconds here to make sure everyone that's going to put something in has done that. And I would say it looks like we're finished. So do you want to tell us, Ava, what the results were? Oh, yeah, Gina.
Hopefully the poll results will be shown on everybody's screen, but it seems that there's some clear majorities with everybody that's attending and a clear interest looking into elementary and high school, Diane.
Right. High school. It's interesting. Okay. Well, now we know just a little bit more about you folks. So thank you. And you know more about who's in the audience here. So Waterloo. So everyone, check your chat box. You'll see the messages from folks about where they live, although you probably actually know most of the people that are in this session. I'm not sure. Good. So I think we'll carry on. And so our next slide essentially just shows you some of the things that TREA has been doing in the community. So it's a very active group, and projects change from time to time. We help with helmet fits, and we obviously attend meetings. We're involved with renewable projects. The one picture is some workshops we did with newcomers. So that is that slide. And then we'll move to the next slide. You can see more on our recycling projects, compost days, and we have a pollinator garden there that you can see. So that tells you a little bit about TREA. So our next comment is about the outcome of the session. So to summarize today's talk, our outcome is to introduce education supported experiential learning and environmental leadership opportunities offered by various types of communities. Our presentation agenda will touch on experiential learning as an asset to environmental leadership. So our agenda essentially is, first we'll talk about theory that's offered, some community benefits, some considerations when working with community, specific experiences, a little bit of big picture stuff, and some resources that we have that we hope you will find useful. And this will be followed by the question and answer with you to end our session. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the theory. I'll get that out of the way. And as noted, I've looked at a lot of people, as I'm sure you have as well, in terms of their theories on adult education. So what does experiential learning offer? In the mid-'80s, psychologist David Kolb published his theories as a 4-stage cycle for experiential learning. So as the name suggests, it involves learning from experience. And so obviously people can come into this circle at any stage. Now, Kolb explains students will have a concrete experience on which they will reflect. So possibly they'll be given an assignment or other structured activity. And from this, they will synthesize new perspectives and knowledge. Students can then apply and test this learning in future situations. Kolb went on to indicate an experiential learning cycle rests on the idea that each person has a specific dominant type of learning tendency or preference, potentially based on their background and experiences. So we just ask you to hold tight here because we're going to ask you if you can identify your, sort of dominant learning tendency after we finish this. So we'll have to be thinking from that perspective. So However, as noted, it is a cycle, so depending on the situation or environment, the learners may enter the learning cycle at any point and will best learn a new task if they are actually able to practice all four modes at some time. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. So the first box that you see there is concrete experience, which represents feeling. So learning from specific experiences and relating to people, being sensitive to other people's feelings, thus demonstrating active involvement in the experience is the first one. Then we have reflective observation, which is watching. So observing before making a judgment by viewing the environment from different perspectives, looking for the meaning of things, thus demonstrating an analysis of the experience. Then we have abstract conceptualization, which is just thinking, and logically analyzing ideas and acting on intellectual understanding of the situation, thus demonstrating the drawing of conclusions and evaluating what was learned. And then lastly, active experimentation, which is doing. So the ability to get things done by influencing people and events through action. And this might include risk-taking as well, thus demonstrating actual implementation of what's been learned. So in the slide that you see with the boxes within the box, in this graph, each learning style that I've just mentioned is in a different quadrant of the learning cycle. So you can see there's a bit of an emphasis on what people might focus on. So here we have the diverging or the feeling and watching learning style, which is full of learners who look at things with a unique perspective. They want to observe before diving in, and they also have a strong imagination. These learners usually prefer to work in groups and have broad interests, so they're kind of a people person. They usually focus on concrete learning and reflective observation. So that's up at the top on the right. Then we move to the assimilating or the thinking and watching learning style. It involves learners getting clear information by pulling a number of different observations and thoughts into an integrated whole. These learners prefer concepts and abstracts to people, reasoning inductively, creating models, theories, experiments. These learners focus on abstract conceptualization and reflective observation. So that's at the bottom on the right. Then we have the converging group, or the thinking and doing learners, which emphasize the practical application of ideas to solve problems. They apply what they've learned to practical issues like decision-making, problem solving, and prefer technical tasks over interpersonal issues. They're known to experiment with new ideas, and their learning focuses on abstract conceptualization and experimentation. So that's on the bottom left. The accommodating learners, the feeling and doing folks, prefer practicality. They enjoy new challenges, solving problems in an intuitive, trial and error manners such as discovery learning. They tend to be at ease with people. These learners utilize concrete learning and active experimentation when they learn. So that's on the top left. So I'm just going to give you an example. And again, as I said, we're going to ask you to put in the box what you think your strongest learning style is, and we'll see what happens. So the example is of how this particular theory pertains to learning to ride a bicycle. So your reflective observer person is going to think about riding the bike, and they're going to watch someone else ride a bike first. The abstract conceptualization person is going to understand the theory and have a clear grasp of how the biking concept's supposed to work. The concrete experience style is going to receive practical tips and techniques from a biking expert before they get started. And the active experimentation person is going to leap on the bike and have a go at it. So you can see how it's useful perhaps to have all 4 opportunities before you get on the bike. But anyway, that is not always the case. So we're going to move to our first question for you. And I'm assuming if anyone's done the Myers-Briggs, they'll know these different kinds of quizzes and tests where you pick what color you are or whatever. And so that's essentially what we're saying here. So our questions to you are such that we're wondering if you agree that feeling and thinking create different learning styles. So to just give us a yes or a no. And then the second question is if you just want to share your easiest learning style with us from the 4 options, that's okay too. So it, again, it has a lot to do with where you grow up and what kinds of things you do. So how you make those learning actions come together. Is it by feeling, watching, thinking, or doing? So we're going to ask you to put those remarks in the chat box over the next couple of minutes. And hopefully that made sense to you. So it's kind of interesting that Kolb's framework assumes that people can either be feeling or thinking, but not both. And then they can either be watching or doing, but not both. So this is an interesting consideration in bringing in new experiences. So maybe Ava, can you give us a summary when we got pretty well everybody with their answers? Getting lots of items in our chat box.
Yeah, Diane, I'm noticing a lot of people have, there's consensus in the chat box. I think everybody said yes to question 1, they agree. And also most people are adding in that they feel they learn with doing. There's also a lot of discussion about people learning styles as a mix. So it's not just doing, there's a lot of people also adding watching and things like that as well.
Right. And that's what's interesting as well, that theory suggests that you have the feeling and the watching together, the thinking and the watching together, the thinking and the doing together, and the feeling and the doing. So I think, you know, if people consider after the session some examples, they can ponder on this a little bit further. It also helps you in the classroom when you're working with people that have different strengths of how they learn. So we'll just give it a couple more seconds. Anything else you want to add, Ava?
No.
Okay. Okie doke. So we'll move on to the next slide. And here we just, you know, have a few pictures. You have a classroom, you have an outdoor situation, and you have a corporate sort of approach. So just as a reminder that environmental learning can take place in many ways, and you're not always thinking of it as being formal learning. So our next slide, we'll just look at different types of learning. And I believe this is your question at the end that demonstrates that you've been part of this session. I think my question was, why is it important to bring the community into the classroom? But I think the actual question they gave you includes some examples. So I am helping you here by providing some of the opportunities of how one would learn. So we have traditional learning, which I think has been pretty popular until more recently when the experiential learning has started to come forward. So in the traditional learning, you have what's going on in the classroom. You might do role playing, you might have lectures, you might have case studies, manuals and videos, e-learning, seminars, different kinds of games. But the experiential learning is considered to be some of that extra work that takes more time to put together. So we have your field trips and your outings, or courses outdoors as well. You have the opportunity to go on a co-op placement or internship while you're taking your education. You have team building activities, mentorships, storytelling, adventure-based learning, debates, and the whole taking on the responsibility of teaching others and creative games. So this is demonstrating that experiential learning being direct experience and focused reflection in order to increase knowledge and develop skills and clarify values. And again, of course, these slides are available at the end, so you don't have to write them all down. So moving to our next slide, you may not have thought about this, but here's an example of something outside the classroom that could be considered experiential learning as well. So if you have a small balcony and you want to tackle putting a garden on, so again, we're always learning. So we're going to move to our next exercise, which Ava is going to introduce to you.
This one's really similar to what we just previously did. If you could put your remarks in the chat box and give an example of your experiential learning, then as the question said.
So I'll let you read off, Ava, any of these ones that you can see. So, I mean, even riding the bike is an experience that may have impacted your lifestyle, or had you make a decision in your life. So, sometimes it's small things that make big differences. Could be a family member or a friend that's done something and invited you to attend. So unfortunately, I can't see the chat box right now. So Ava, can you tell me if we have any bidders?
Yeah, Diane, there's a lot of variety here. I think something that's really interesting is a lot of people have environmental experience, but then there's other experiences that people are sharing that are a little bit more varied, which is awesome. And they also range from what level people were engaging. So we have some that are at the high school level or working with younger people as well. And so, for example, some of them are building community gardens, Diane, or
Mm.
working at conservation areas. Different counselors have been volunteering, even just participating in debates. And so I think that's really interesting that there's such a variety.
Okay. Perfect. And of course, we can look at these later on as well. So I apologize, I cannot see the chat box right now. But Ava, if you can give me a sense of when people are finishing off, that would be good.
I think that most of the answers are in Diane.
We're good to go? Okay. So we'll move on to our next slide. So with experiential learning towards leadership, there are obviously different benefits to the students. And so that includes increased engagement, connecting with theory and practice, establishing a deeper understanding of the subject matter, improving critical thinking, problem solving, and analytical skills. Offering a safe learning environment is important, and potentially some folks may have a mindset shift. Giving students opportunity to see the impacts of their own actions, producing measurable outcomes, and establishing teamwork. These are all benefits of moving into experiential learning. So now we actually have another exercise for you, which Ava will explain to you, and she'll also highlight the answers when we get to that stage.
So this one we have on the slide, it's written draw imaginary lines. We're going to switch to the next slide right now, and you'll be able to see that this is just a mix and match little exercise to kind of get a better understanding of things in the London area.
So we want you to match them up. They're not in the right order. And really all you can do is look at the title of the group and draw a conclusion there. Of course, if you're from London, you have an advantage. We won't know how many of you did this, but we'll trust that everyone gave it a shot. Might give it another minute. So maybe we can move to the answer page, and Ava, if you can just identify them out loud, because some of the groups, the logos are small.
So I'll be a little honest. I'm actually an out of province student. I'm from Vancouver originally, so I don't have the advantage of being local. But as you can see here on this slide, one of the biggest things that TREA involved in reuse of an image of compost. The bicycle is connected to Can Bike, Reforest London. You can see an image of tree planting. And I think all what the big goal of this slide was to really illustrate the basic ways that these different organizations connect to the environment, and then also ways that you can learn by engaging with them as well.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. And again, what we're just taking note of is that environmental leadership and learning can take place in many ways. So here we have pictures of folks on field trip, and we have some work in park, and we have a food bank project. So moving to the next slide. So I wanted to just cover the fact that experiential learning takes a bit more time than your normal classroom. And you're probably already finding this. I know that over the last year, TREA was doing how-to workshops. And we started off, we were doing them in libraries, and we had a presenter, and everyone was in the room and sitting and paying attention to the topic. And then because they started in March, we had COVID upon us the following week, and we had to switch to online. We had to create PowerPoints, we had to video everything, we had to set up Zoom meetings. So it obviously turned out to be a whole lot more activity than we expected. So the experiential part with being face-to-face with the presenter didn't happen, and we had to come up with something else. So with considerations, it does mean more work to engage the community into the classroom, but there can be great rewards. And so here we have a list of considerations: advanced planning, reflection, debriefing time, deciding whether you want your project inside or outside of your classroom, having clear outcomes and timelines because you're working with someone in the community, possibly considering small assignments to get you to the end, revisiting how you're going to mark things on your rubric, and helping the students when they actually go to present to the community partner what they've accomplished. And so the next slide, again, is sort of a London-based message. Here we have the Thames Valley District School Board. So sometimes you don't have to go too far to gain environmental leadership tools. And the school board's a great example for mini trips and learnings. Thames Valley actually has 3 environmental centers as part of an out-of-school learning landscape, as well as a multi-credit opportunity for students in grade 9 interested in learning and leading programs in their second semester of grade 10. Students can also register for WILD, which is a wilderness-based interdisciplinary leadership development program involving a 7-day canoe trip out of the province, and at least I'm not 100% sure, it's Quantico Provincial Park. Schools can build outdoor classrooms, reading circles, and vegetable and butterfly gardens. And schools can also participate with EcoSchools, which is a certification program, third party, including energy conservation planning, composting, recycling. And they do have an emphasis on reducing water bottle usage in their schools. So you can find out more by going to the Thames Valley District School Board website to see what all is available. So our next slide is moving us into a different form of leadership, which because I'm involved with an international project, I just wanted to share with you. So hopefully what we've discussed so far demonstrates the possibilities locally are endless for engagement because cities can be the front line in tackling climate change and issues. Organizations you can share with your students that discuss many cities and their resiliency includes, for instance, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So FCM is a national voice for communities here in Canada, including their international work. They also have a focus on women into politics, Indigenous communities, and climate change. It's an interesting website to look at. As well, a number of agencies exist globally, such as ICLEI, ICLEI, which is a global local governments for sustainability network of more than 1,750 local and regional governments working on sustainable urban development. So ICLEI used to stand for International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, so that shows how long I have followed it. They changed their name. And then there are other groups like C40, which is a strong network of mayors of leading cities globally. It started with 40 cities and now it has 97 cities. Another group is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, an international organization that works to build better policies for better lives. And there are many more agencies that exist as well that you can seek out. So for some of you, you may be quite familiar with the UN programs, but I just want to mention when you move from the discussion of global to the overwhelming topic of climate change leadership globally, it can be harder to connect the two of them. For instance, the United Nations Environmental Program tells us that at the end of 2020, in their latest emissions gap report, that more countries are committing to net zero emission goals for 2050. And so what does net zero emissions mean? The idea implies that the world can continue to reduce emissions as long as there's a way to offset them. And so then it gets a little technical because key strategies on the international level include increasing energy efficiency, decarbonizing the power sector, switching to electricity and other low and zero carbon fuels, reducing non-CO2 climate pollutants, and using both nature and technology to remove carbon from the atmosphere. So that's how we're going to get to net zero emissions, it seems. Although I think, conservation is always an important part of this too. In any event, right now, countries are still working on the 2030 targets, let alone the 2050 ones. The United Nations, they hold a climate conference every year as part of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to discuss a global commitment, which many countries made in Paris in 2016. Imagine you've heard of the Paris Agreement. So the next conference is in 2021, and it's called COP26. And COP stands for Conference of the Parties. So that's all your different countries. This particular conference is very important as it will be discussing how countries will reach their existing 2030 targets and in fact increasing them. The conference will be held in Glasgow, the United Kingdom, and was postponed for 2020 because of COVID-19. In addition to Glasgow, Italy is hosting a pre-COP meeting and a Youth for Climate event. So that might be something you wish to share with students, and you can look that up. And in fact, right now I noticed that UNEP has underway a Global Youth Environmental Assembly running from February 12th to the 20th and organized by youth for youth to discuss critical issues and build their capacity to make change in the world. So that's pretty exciting. So we also, of course, want to look at Canada in the scheme of things. Because local leadership should know the big picture when they're dealing with local activities. So with respect to Canada's 2030 targets, which were cautious to begin with and introduced by a previous government, Canada has recently taken some new steps. It has a new document called a Healthy Environment and Healthy Economy Policy, which builds on an earlier policy, which was very inclusive, called the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change. So PCF is much easier to absorb on that one. And it was developed in 2016. So this new report, which has resolved new technologies and COVID considerations, it proposes to exceed Canada's current target of 30% below 2005 levels by the year 2030. It actually is projecting 32 to 40% reduction, not 30, and sets a foundation for this concept moving forward now on net zero emissions by 2050. So this map here has a number of projects underway in different cities, and we've provided you a reference of how to find this map. So another thing that's underway is called the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, and that came to Parliament in November last year and is set to formalize this whole net zero emissions by 2050 process. And to make accountable, it means having interim targets at 5-year milestones, and that helps us follow whether things are moving ahead. So these two government actions are good news. Canada will be giving guidance to municipalities on how to reach stronger targets as a result. It also means that we'll be able to see what's not working possibly as well. So when we move to our next slide here, you'll see a graph. And basically, again, Canada's target is 30% below 2005 levels by the year 2030. And the chart shows us that our greenhouse gas emissions, our CO2 equivalent, were 730 megatons in 2005 and 720 megatons in 2018. So what does that tell you? Not as much progress as hoped for. Also in 1990, emission levels were 603 megatons. So that means we actually have a 21% increase with 2018 since 1990. So that's not the plan. We have to do more for sure. Many other countries are working ahead, and Canada has to make some tough decisions. So emissions have been hovering around 700 and 720 megatons in recent years, but 2018 is the most recent data set, and that shows you that 729 megatons is the most recent data pretty much. And so why is that? This increase is attributed to higher transportation, fuel consumption, winter heating, and oil and gas extraction. And what are we actually aiming for? It's 511 megatons in 2030. So there's lots still to do to move that forward, and we have other countries that will be pressuring us to make things work. Canadian cities themselves have their own databases because they line up with the federal databases. So if you're in the classroom, you can invite a local decision maker to your school to give an overview of your community's emissions and energy use and what the reduction plan is for 2030 and 2050, because this is what cities are doing now. And this brings everything back to the local level for you and allows people to feel that they're engaged in the big picture. So that means that for a long time we've said think global, act local. And I think we can actually say think local and act global. So in summarizing our talk, it is good to know what Canada is doing so that you can discuss it in your classroom. or if the community comes forward to connect with the school as well. This helps you actually make the difference given the urgency of climate change resolution, because you can make changes. So here we have some great teachers resources. I have used some of these in the past and shared and used them when visiting schools. They're all adaptable Canadian classrooms, in particular for your own opportunity to network and plug into new ideas. If you're really into the environmental education piece, there is a yearly conference that the Canadian Network for Environmental Education and Communications puts on. And more recently, it is now chaired by the Eco Schools program. So Ava, we're going to now experiment with a Mentimeter and see what happens. Do you want to describe what we're going to do?
Yeah, so we like to invite everybody to, as it's directed at the beginning, or sorry, top of this slide, go to www.menti.com using any device, and you can add a submission using this code as many times as you like, or as few times as you like, and hopefully we'll get a live word cloud to build on this page.
So maybe Ava, you could go into the Menti.com, and then we think we're going to see the word come up in front of us, right? So it'll take folks a few minutes to access the website and put that code in. It might not like everybody trying to do it at once too. That's another thing. We'll see. Is anybody having any luck? I don't see any words yet. Can you stay with the Mentimeter? Thank you. We'll give it another couple of seconds here. So Olivia is saying that it's not showing up. We'll give it another try. I think you know what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make a word cloud. And this is the challenge of technology. We never know for sure if it's going to work. But we're going to stay with that other slide now. Emily. So I think that Ava can put it in again. But I'm not sure. It will email me the results later. Well, I guess that's better than nothing. Okay, well, we tried. I think we'll just keep going and wrapping up. So thank you for that, and feel free to set up your own Mentimeter and see what happens. Apologies. We'll just move to the final slides. Emmeline, can we move to the next slide? Okay, great. So final sharings, I just want you to know that, again, having students work on authentic problems from the community can mirror teamwork, solve problems. So it's a good exercise for them. Also on our website, we have a listing of professional careers in the environmental field you may wish to share with your students. Sometimes there's just so many options, especially in high school, that they can't possibly know that something that they would love to do actually is a career they could move into. And we have some resources as well that are on our website that you can look at for classrooms. And then lastly, we're just ready for some of the question and answer. The next slide. And that's how to reach our organization. So again, thank you for having us today. And we only have one technical glitch. So I guess that's something that can happen. You'll have to put your questions in the chat box, as I understand it, because we can't sort of take people off the mute. So do we have any questions? Or did it all make sense? And look at that, the Mentimeter is working. Perfect. So glad. I'm sure you've seen these before, they're kind of fun. So it sounds like we might not have questions. People can kind of flip through the slides again and pick up on anything that they want to revisit. Let's take one more look at that Mentimeter, if we can. Like to see.
Sorry, I'm having like a technical issue now. I accidentally selected one of the links. There you are, Diane.
Okay. So can you read off some of the words that were repeated and kind of stand out?
Yeah, the largest one is community and sustainability. It looks to me like there's a bit of a tie there. We did have 45 submissions as well. So thank you to everybody that took the time to go to that link and contribute to all of the exercises as well. But another one that I like is, Diane, is this word connection, aging. Some of the smaller ones that I think were interesting as well is community can. I had to find it, but it's there. And looking at just the different ways that you can engage. I think that is a big theme that this word cloud shows.
Okay, so I think we have one question here. Do you have any suggestions as to ongoing digital initiatives to promote to older students to get them engaged? And perhaps you're making reference to COVID, I'm not sure. But I think that having students put together some of their own projects, for instance, a presentation or a workshop or teaching others in the classroom is possibly the way to go in terms of having them do assignments where they're creating the material. So that might be helpful. Can we go back to the resource page? Sure. I think that you will also have these slides after. Emily, can you take it back to the list of all the different links? Are we going to lose the Mentimeter if we do that? Did you want Michael just to ask a question about one of them specifically, or?
I was just looking to copy down the online programs one. A few of us are doing an AFE in the next coming month, and I just wanted to know if I can complete an online program to get some hours done.
If you can complete one, like some of these are more materials for the classroom. So different exercises, but there's quite a bit of information in these websites.
Okay, yeah, that's no worries. I misunderstood.
Okay. Okay, there. How do you find students react when learning about climate change? Do they have climate fatigue or are they hopeful? Well, I have to say the kids are pretty alert at what's going on, and it's probably fatiguing for them, for sure. I mean, you can see that um, our young populations are being much more vocal than they were in the past. So that's why I'm trying to approach this with what I'm sharing with you is to look at it from, here's what's going on a different scale, and we can impact, everything. London, for instance, has 3 MPs, members of parliament, plus there's one that's on the south end, so there's sort of 3.5, because he has a larger district. You can have someone from City Hall tell you what they're doing, and to be aware of what the planning is to get us where we need to be is one thing I think that helps kids feel more hopeful, and to see also where they can plug in. So we'll give it another couple seconds, and then I imagine we'll wind up. So again, thank you everybody for participating with this. We hope that there's something new that you picked up on, and you can also reach TREA through the information on the last slide. So info@TREA.ca. So Emmeline, I think we're going to finish up.
Awesome. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you again, Diane, Ava, and Carter. I appreciate you trying to assist me with the Mentimeter. Sorry that we had some technical difficulties. As for everyone else, I hope you all have a great day. I'm sure I'll see you in sessions later. So yeah, have a great day, you guys.
Bye, everyone.